Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Mike Doloff, Chief Revenue Officer at Inflow Communications. I've got with me Travis Dillard, our President and CEO, and Chris Riccio, Director of Contact Center and Advanced Applications. Thanks for spending a few moments with us today. So talking today about a topic, man, I tell you what, sometimes these buzzwords take off in our space, and the one that's been just absolutely top of everyone, on the tip of everyone's tongue, see it, hear it, I think everyone's nauseous every time they hear now is CX, customer experience. It's everywhere, and a lot of companies selling software, trying to make a lot of money off of this craze. And there's a lot of factors why this is a big deal. And set aside all the hype, it actually is a big deal. This is a huge way that businesses are trying to differentiate their service. A lot's going on in this space. But one of the things that doesn't get a lot of fanfare is what we're going to be talking with Travis and Chris about today, and that's what is customer experience? How do you measure it, and where do you look for it? And coming at this from a kind of a more traditional contact center angle, what's some of the data from a call center, contact center that can help us get insight into CX, and what are some other things that we can do to measure, track, and improve that? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Travis, and we'll jump into this.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, just to take a step backwards real quick, it's funny that you mentioned, yeah, you're right. Every time you see CX, you know, even myself, there's an eye roll, and because people are trying to capitalize on this acronym. By the way, for those of you, CX, customer experience. But it is absolutely crucial. It really is. You know, Chris Riccio, we were, 4 or 5 years ago, giving a stat out. You know, by the year 2020, a certain percentage of all business will be done based on customer experience. And this is really before CX started hitting the main scene. And I forget what that statistic was, Chris, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. It was something like, 80+% of business will be done based on customer experience.
Yeah, it was 80%. 80%. Okay. It was pretty high up there. People are going to base their decisions about who they go to based on that experience.
Which I think we can all understand and relate to, especially as we're consumers of brands and we want a frictionless experience. And there's been books that have been put out about it, effortless experience and other things. And probably it'd be interesting to see what those statistics look like now. But I think everybody knows you absolutely have to differentiate your business by providing a personalized, effortless, frictionless experience, or you're going to be a laggard and potentially out of business. And so, but breaking that down to the meat and potatoes, back to what we're talking about today, is what are we measuring? How can you start measuring things inside and outside your contact center, and to start tracking how well you're servicing your customers and what that experience looks like. And then we'll probably cap off today's conversation about some new technology that's coming out that we're all very excited about around conversation analytics and how that can be applied to ascertaining what your customer experience is. So Chris, can you talk a little bit about traditional contact center metrics, what people should be tracking, what that looks like, and why as it pertains to customer experience?
Sure. And so, we always have the same discussions in terms of metrics in the contact center, and everyone is doing the same thing. They've been doing it for years. And what is the missing component there, to add some more depth here, is that it's not just a matter of tracking the metrics, it's looking deeper. It's developing strategies around that. And what I'm seeing now is that the shift has changed dramatically over the last several years from, here's my reportable data, but what am I doing with it? I don't know how many contact centers I go into on a regular basis, and they're like, well, here's my abandon rate, here's my talk time, here's my average talk time, what's the rate per hour, things like that. And people are constantly asking me, what's the standard? I kind of throw standards away in that regard, because the standard is only a visual look at a black and white metric. If you're just looking at that number alone and not translating it into some action item to better the customer experience, you're completely out of the game at this point. Right now, the key metrics people still look for, back to your question, is abandon rate. That's a critical one. Abandon rate points directly to how many potential customers called us and hung up for a reason. And the only reason you should walk away, or what you should take away from an abandoned call, is my customer was impatient and hung up. That's a problem. So abandon rate still is high on the register there, because it's really the beginning point of the CX, the customer experience. The other one is queue time. What's my queue time, wait time? Call it what you will. People call it queue time. People call it wait time. The wait time is going to have a direct correlation to the abandon rate. nobody abandons a call unless they've actually had to sit and wait. And we're very much in a me first society. I need help right now. And if it's a critical issue, let's talk about healthcare. It's a very personal experience. And I think you should be looking at wait time and queue time and abandon rate collectively. The other item that I think you should look at is transfer rates. Transfer rates indicate someone has landed in a destination that was the inappropriate destination, or the call requires more follow-up. There's two problems with that. Either my IVR, my menu isn't clear, or the staff handling the conversation isn't well-rounded enough to handle that call in a single touch point. If I have to transfer that call to somewhere else, that's an impact on customer experience. So transfer rate is a big one as well. And the last one I always look at is service level. And there are many contact centers that just do not manage by service level. I'm sort of stunned, if I can be bold here, at how many people don't really understand the concept of service level. To make it simple, service level is, what are your goals for achieving great customer service? And if you're not mapping at least that, then you're completely doing a stab in the dark. Hey, everything looks great because people are happy and answering calls. That's not how you close the gap. So back to your question, the 4 metrics I would manage and monitor without fail would be abandon rate, queue rate and wait time, transfer rates, and service level. Those are critical. Those point directly to the customer experience, but the black and white option requires you to go further. Once you find a negative metric, if you don't take the additional step to look at the strategy and the underlying causes, then you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, you talk through the transfer time, or the transfers. I mean, that's a friction point, and there's other ways to measure this, and I think we'll get into this when you talk about conversation analytics. But also, you know, when you capture someone's account information, pass that through if you do have the transfer, because there's nothing more irritating as a consumer than giving that multiple times. I think anybody that's watching this video can appreciate and empathize with that.
I want to add one comment. You know, the metrics themselves, my point really is about the metrics is that's just one entity. Everyone should translate a metric as a symptom of something else. Your job is to figure out what the symptoms are and come up with an action to cure it. Travis brought up a very great point. Many contact centers will ask you for their account information or look up information, but as soon as you opt out to talk to somebody, the minute somebody asks me, oh, what's your account number? Wait a minute, why am I doing this again? I've already done this. So it goes back to one of the items that Travis talked through in the intro here, and the discussion points is the effort, the level of effort. One of the books that I think is fantastic to read, and if you haven't read it as a contact center manager, you're missing a golden opportunity to really understand the translation, is the effortless experience. Not only are you looking at metrics from the point of view of which metrics point to symptoms, what level of effort is required by the customer to get to their destination? That's a critical one for customer experience. And since we're talking about customer experience, I think having to understand how you use technology to weave it together so you don't have to re-ask the question, what's your account number? Hey, opt out to talk to Sally Jones. Okay, and the first thing she says is, what's my account number? Technology should be working for us, not against us.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, there's a lot of forward-thinking technology we're about ready to talk about, but that technology has been around a long time. The ability to capture data, figure out who your customer is, and make sure that all the touch points along that call know it. So when you call a major brand and you enter your account information and they ask for it again, or sometimes multiple people ask for it, and that's ridiculous. You've failed miserably, and you don't deserve our business, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm being bold. So that technology has existed. And I guess the other thing to kind of dovetail, or to bookend kind of traditional contact center metrics is, you know, the voice of the customer, right? After call surveys, whether it's SMS or voice, I know there's a lot of discussion and debate around what's effective and if that actually works or not. But I mean, having some sort of methodology to close the loop to figure out if customers are happy or not, it's better than nothing. And it at least starts pointing you in the right direction as to customer satisfaction and customer experience.
Yeah, Travis, we'll transition into the conversation piece of this, but I think one last point I want to make on it too is, like Chris said, this is they're just vanity metrics unless you do something with them, right? What are these things telling? Like Chris said, these are symptoms of something. Got to find out what it is. And there's some really easy ones that right there at everyone's fingertips that haven't been tapped into. That's kind of the basics. But what we're seeing now, and I'll turn this back to you guys, but just what we're seeing now is you have the power with conversation analytics, right? Where you take all of those conversations with customers and turn that into structured data, which can then be mined for keywords, for emotions, for compliance, for adherence, for all sorts of stuff. Now you can have 100% of those calls being looked at. So what do you see as opportunities here from a metrics and data standpoint to enhance the customer experience with conversation analytics?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris. Then I'll chime in.
I was going to dovetail off that. My apologies. I'll turn it back to you in a second, Travis. Is that, we were talking about baseline data and metrics and symptoms. That is still old school thinking. What Mike is referring to is conversation analytics. And my point here in speaking up is that if you're not used to massaging the data you already have available, you have a bigger task now with conversation analytics. Everything is data driven. And I know several years ago, people would say things about big data. Well, big data has been around forever. What we're seeing is this real jump from basic analytics and information that we've talked about in terms of contact center, abandon rate, transfer rate, et cetera, the items I just mentioned. Now we're taking that whole thought philosophy. Now let's start getting the conversations that are happening in real time, take the entire call recording from start to finish, analyze what words are being said, put those into another whole output of data, and then building strategies off of that. I think conversation analytics is the next big frontier in terms of how you can manipulate and use the data to your advantage. The other thing that Mike just mentioned too is after call surveys is that a lot of folks tend to manage their contact center from behind a console. Let me run my reports. Hey, black and white, it looks good. That's just 10%. You've got to actually spend time speaking with your customers. And if you don't have a good feedback loop after call surveys, picking up the phone, talking to somebody, emails, whatever, you're really missing the essence. And I think this is an important thing to think about. When we talk about just general feedback from clients, the annoyed customer will give you feedback first. And that only represents about 10% of your feedback. You have a whole other range of feedback that could be completely beneficial. But if you're only relying on the people that communicate with you and you're doing no perspective on the balance and percentages, you're missing another whole opportunity. And of course, it's really difficult to get people to come back to the table and answer the surveys and answer questions. I do them as often as I can, but I think the average user is like, I don't have time for this. But conversation analytics actually is another tool that lets you sort of get outside of not having to rely upon the after call survey and give you a whole other payload of data. So conversation analytics is the most exciting thing I've seen in the recent years, although it's been around for a while, but I think people are starting to make some strides in terms of how do I present the data to users and how do I take action based on the information that I'm receiving, such as sentiment analysis of both the agent and the customer. And since you're talking CX, all the words that play into what the customer might be trying to tell you. People aren't always direct. Anyways, I could go on and on about data. I'm really excited about data. Conversation analytics, wow, there's a payload of information, but it's going to require somebody to spend time looking at it, but it's well worth your time for sure.
Absolutely. Conversation analytics, I'm equally as excited about. I mean, the ability to capture hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of minutes and turning that into actionable data, structured data, apply an AI treatment, an artificial intelligence treatment to it. And you talk about the voice of the customer, from a dashboard, you can see empathy, you can see communication skills, you can see effectiveness, you talk about transfers, you can see if customers are irritated about getting transferred from a different channel. Maybe they came in on a web chat and had to call, and then because you have an ineffective channel, or you can start tracking keywords and identifying opportunities, or even, business opportunities for the business, or training opportunities for agents, things like that. I think part of me half thinks that, after call surveys and those types of things might become a moot point with conversation analytics, because you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening with your customers literally at a glance. And I know it's been around for a while, but I think it's now getting more effective and a lot easier to use. You literally plug it in and it just starts learning and provides incredible insights right out of the box. Some of the tools that we're looking at and recommending to some of our customers. It's pretty
much
exciting
more
stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, it's much more cost effective because it used to be really cost prohibitive. It's much more cost effective. And to your point, yeah, I think we're going to start seeing less and less people rely upon after call surveys because this is a whole other payload. And then so the development of strategies around the data you see is going to be critical. So it's things such as, what are your customers asking for? I think it would be smart for anyone that can get their hands on conversation analytics to start analyzing, what are your customers asking for, and using that as a direct strategy to make information available, whether it's on your website, whether it's through a self-service portal, through IVR. Your customers will tell you in a roundabout way information they're not finding and wish you had. And if you're not acting upon that juicy, it's sort of like a gimme. It's sort of like they're serving it on a silver platter without directly saying it or asking. Building strategies around that is the only way you're going to maintain the competitive edge in the CX industry or the customer service industry. And I tell you, I feel it everywhere I go. I recently took a trip that required me to rent a vehicle, and I used to go to a counter to rent a vehicle and just run off and get my car. Now you go to the counter, you get escorted to someone who then picks up and says, "Thank you, Mr. Riccio. Great to have you here today. Welcome to Portland, where I happen to be. And I see that you have this sort of vehicle." And they actually walk you to the vehicle, make sure the vehicle's satisfactory for you. It's no longer, hey, just go walk around with a form and fill out the form. And if you've rented a car, you know you have to check the vehicle for its current state so you don't get, just to make sure the vehicle's in good working order. But the handoff these days is fantastic. Everyone is fighting for the customer. They even gave me a bottle of water because it was a warm day. So the customer experience has to be part of your arsenal. It has to be part of your trajectory. And with conversation analytics, you have a lot more ability. So seize the opportunity, because if you're not seizing that opportunity, I mean, you're missing a golden opportunity to really grow your business, improve the customer experience, and keep those customers for the long term, which is what everybody wants. Retain that customer.
Yeah, and with the ease of implementation and just the absolute affordability of conversation analytics these days, especially in a SaaS world, software as a service, there's really, if you want to really know where your customer experience is and drive it forward, there's no excuse not to be looking at conversation analytics.
Yep. Love it. Great content. Chris, one of the things you touched on, high touch, low touch in this model as well. There's future conversations. One last thing I'll make from a comment perspective of conversation analytics for our business. One of the things that's helped us with is we're constantly asking customers questions, just like Travis was saying, what are questions, or Chris, you were saying, what questions are they asking us? There's probably an information gap. There's some opportunity to improve information sharing, instructions, whatever. But we were asking questions of customers all the time to get feedback back in sort of like a real-time survey, if you will. Well, if we ask those questions consistently and using conversation analytics, we can get back and sort of quantify those responses as opposed to just marking them on a survey tool or spreadsheet. We can actually go in and find all those conversations where this question was asked and see all those answers, and also see who isn't asking those questions from an agent side too. So some really cool, interesting use cases you can have as you drill down into what you're trying to get out of it. Yeah, it's there for the taking. So
yeah, just a simple question like, what are you guys working on in your business? Wow, hundreds of thousands of minutes and answers to that can change the trajectory of what you're providing for your customers. I mean, it's not just driving customer experience, it's driving business strategy.
Yep.
Exciting.
It's a strategy. I mean, years ago, I would have died to have more insight for strategies. And then as the technology evolved, the cost was, oh, sorry about that, it's too expensive. But nowadays, it's like, wow, I want that now because it costs me nothing, and the ease of deployment is fantastic. And I know that, Mike, you're looking at a couple of applications in general for our client base, but I've seen a couple as well. I mean, think of where technology is today. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and we were seeing the conversation translate in real time, being fed to 3 different data streams. I mean, the readily available information is just ripe for the customer experience for you to build solid strategies around.
It's exciting.
Exciting times. Thanks, guys, for the time. Great discussion as always. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.